the touch of fingers against lyre strings, the glide of hands across skin during an oil massage, the weight of golden ornaments upon the wrists. This was how Roman courtesans conquered the most influential men of the empire. But their true power lay elsewhere. They possessed secrets capable of destroying careers. They commanded techniques honed over years of training. They could compel a senator to reverse his decision with a single gesture. Their hands created what matrons could not even imagine. Every movement was calculated. Every touch served a purpose. And senators paid entire fortunes for this. What were they truly selling? The truth proves far more intricate than it first appears. The marble floors of the villa on the Palatine Hill preserved their coolness even in the heart of a Roman summer. Faustina slowly drew her fingers across the strings of a Greek lyre, and the melody scattered through the atrium, mingling with the fragrance of Egyptian incense. She knew that he would soon enter through the portico, Senator Marcus Licinius, whose speech tomorrow would determine the fate of a bill concerning the eastern provinces. Her hands, anointed with myrrh oil, froze upon the strings. In the polished bronze of an oil lamp, her face reflected back, not youthful, yet beautiful with that beauty which arrives with years and wisdom. A white stola of the finest linen flowed across her body, leaving one shoulder bare, the mark of her status. She was not a matron in a palla, concealing every line of her form, nor was she a common meretrix who sold herself at the gates of the circus. Faustina belonged to that rare class of women whose existence Rome acknowledged with reluctance, yet could not deny. Courtesan, a word that did not exist in Latin, yet one that took flesh in the interweaving of Greek learning and Roman pragmatism. A woman whose home was visited by consuls, whose judgments were quoted in the baths, whose influence seeped into the marble halls of the Senate, through the cushions of dining couches and whispers at feasts. She set down the lyre. Footsteps across the atrium mosaic drew near. Faustina exhaled softly, adjusting a fold of her stola, and touched the amulet at her neck, a tiny golden owl, symbol of Athena. The goddess of wisdom was her patroness, not Venus, because what she offered her patrons was not merely the body. It was conversation, understanding, consolation. It was the art of becoming a mirror in which a man saw the finest version of himself. Tonight, Marcus Licinius would come to her exhausted by doubt, and he would depart with clarity of purpose. And Faustina, whom society labeled infamis, dishonorable, would once again shift a piece on the invisible board of Roman politics. In the era of the late Republic and early Empire, Rome was a city of paradoxes. A society that extolled the virtues of matrons and the severity of mos maiorum, the customs of the ancestors, simultaneously created a complex ecosystem of women who existed beyond these boundaries. Roman law divided all freeborn women into two classes: matrons, protected by laws of marital fidelity, and infames, those who had forfeited social honor through engagement in certain professions. Prostitution was legal and regulated by the state. Women who practiced it were required to register with the aediles, wear distinctive clothing, a toga instead of a stola, and pay taxes. Yet within this category existed an enormous chasm. At the bottom dwelled the lupae and quadrantarii, street prostitutes whose services cost a quarter of an ace. Higher stood the inhabitants of lupanaria, brothels. But at the very peak of this hierarchy existed women of an entirely different nature. Delicatae, the refined ones. This was how they addressed courtesans of the highest circle, whose homes on the Palatine and Esquiline rivaled the luxury of patrician villas. Their origins were diverse. Educated Greek women, freed women from wealthy families, sometimes impoverished patrician ladies who had lost their fortunes in civil wars. One thing united them. They had transformed the ancient Greek tradition of hetaire, companions, into a Roman institution of influence. The history of such women traced its roots to the Hellenistic world. In Athens of the 5th and 6th centuries, before the Common Era, heterae were educated women who participated in symposia, discussing philosophy, politics, and art. The renowned Aspasia was the companion of Pericles, and according to accounts, influenced his political decisions. When Rome conquered the Greek world, it imported not only marble and philosophers, but also this model of the educated companion. By the 1st century before the Common Era, Rome had developed a stratum of courtesans, whose homes became unofficial salons. Here, poets recited their verses before public performances. Politicians discussed strategies. Philosophers conducted debates. Roman matrons could not attend male feasts and symposia, could not freely converse with men outside the family circle. Courtesans filled this niche. They were then interlocutors, advisors, sometimes lovers, but most importantly, they were free from the constraints that bound virtuous women. This freedom carried a price. Legally, they occupied the category of infamous, alongside actors, gladiators, and procurers. They could not enter into certain types of contracts. Their testimony in court held less weight. Their children bore the stigma of illegitimacy. Public opinion oscillated between admiration for their education and contempt for their status. Cato the Elder furiously denounced the luxury of courtesans, seeing in it a sign of the decline of Roman morals. Yet even he could not deny that the villa of Praesia, a celebrated courtesan from the time of Sulla, was a place where the fates of the Republic were decided. Their influence existed as shadow, yet shadows sometimes define the form of light. When Cicero mentions in letters advice received at a feast at Volumnia's, he speaks not of a political forum, but of a courtesan salon. When Horace dedicates odes to Cinara and Lydia, he celebrates not abstract muses, but real women of the circle. Their names rarely entered official chronicles, yet whispers of their influence permeated the entire city, from the Forum to the Subura. Faustina's mourning began long before the sun rose above the Tiber. Her serving woman, Glycera, an educated Greek who had once herself studied the arts of a hetera, entered the cubiculum, the bedchamber, silently with a pitcher of warm water steeped in rose petals and myrtle. The washing ritual was a meditation. Water poured over hands above a bronze basin washed away the remnants of sleep. Then came facial massage with almond oil, using light circular motions that Glycera had taught her mistress over years. A courtesan's beauty was her capital, though not in the vulgar sense of merchandise. This was the art of maintaining form, as an athlete prepares the body for competition. Faustina spent an hour in her balneum, private bath. First the tepidarium, a warm chamber where pores opened in moisture-saturated air scented with lavender. Then the caldarium, the hot room where steam made the skin breathe. A slave masseuse, trained in the Alexandrian technique, worked with every muscle, releasing tension. Finally, the frigidarium, a cold marble pool to which violet petals had been added. Immersion in the icy water awakened the body, rendered the skin resilient. After the bath began cosmetic preparation. Unlike matrons who concealed the art of makeup behind closed doors, a courtesan transformed it into ritual. Faustina sat before a polished silver mirror, a luxury accessible to few, while Glycera prepared mixtures. The foundation was cream of beeswax, blended with olive oil and crushed pearls. It was applied in a thin layer, creating an effect of inner luminescence. Then came blush of red ochre for the cheeks, antimony for the eyes, ground into powder and mixed with oil. Lips were tinted with mulberry juice or purple extracted from mollusks. A mark of status, for Tyrian purple commanded a fortune. Yet the primary concern was not the quantity of cosmetics, but the art of their invisibility. Matrons often applied white lead so thickly that faces resembled masks. A courtesan, however, strived for the illusion of naturalness, as though beauty emanated from within. This demanded hours of practice and expensive ingredients: cream of donkey's milk, masks of crushed chickpeas and honey, oils from Judea and Arabia. Hair represented a separate art form. Faustina wore hers in the Greek style, a knot at the nape, secured with ivory pins bearing golden tips. Several locks framed the face, curled using a heated metal rod, the calamistrum. Glycera spritzed the hair with a mixture of rose water and cedar oil so it would release fragrance with every movement of the head. After the toilette began intellectual preparation. Faustina was not a mere composer of love elegies. Her library contained scrolls of Greek philosophers, Plato, Epicurus, the Stoics. She read the historical works of Livy and Polybius, knew fragments of Sappho and Anacreon by heart, studied the rhetoric of Cicero. Each morning, she devoted 2 hours to reading, making notations on wax tablets. Then came music. Her instructor, the elderly Greek Philoxenus, visited 3 times weekly. They practiced playing the lyre, trained the voice. A courtesan needed not only to sing, but to understand complex musical forms, to improvise, to match melody to verse. Music at feasts was not background, but part of conversation. When after dinner, guests began philosophical dispute, Faustina could illustrate a thought with a fragment from Sappho, sung to her own accompaniment. She took her midday meal alone or with close friends. Other courtesans with whom she maintained not competition, but a complex network of mutual assistance. They exchanged information: which senators sought a companion for a feast, what political intrigues were brewing, whose patronage was worth pursuing. This was an unspoken guild where reputation served as currency. The evening was prepared like a theatrical production. A slave lit the oil lamps, not all at once, but selectively, creating interplay of light and shadow. Incense was selected to soothe the evening's mood: sandalwood for philosophical conversations, rose for celebrations, myrrh for intimate encounters. The triclinium, the dining room, transformed into a stage. Couches were draped with Syrian fabrics, cushions embroidered with gold. Upon tables of African wood were arranged not mere food, but works of culinary art: oysters from Baiae, eels from Sicily, wines from Falernum, aged 20 years. When a guest entered, Faustina received him, not as a supplicant, but as an equal. She offered to wash his feet, an ancient custom of hospitality, yet did this herself, or through a favored slave, not through ordinary servants. This was a mark of respect. Then began conversation, the true art of the courtesan. She listened more than she spoke. She posed questions that helped the guest reveal himself. She quoted poets not to display erudition, but when a quotation wove naturally into discourse. She knew how to maintain silence when silence spoke more eloquently than words. Marcus Licinius entered the atrium with a face carved from stone. Faustina detected tension in the line of his shoulders, the barely visible crease between his brows. 20 years in this craft had taught her to read men like manuscripts, by their gait, gestures, the manner in which they held a pause. Wine? She did not rise from the couch, merely extended her hand slightly in an inviting gesture. He nodded and settled onto the triclinium opposite. A slave silently presented a cup. Faustina gave a signal with one glance to dilute the wine more than usual. Today Marcus required clarity of thought, not oblivion. For some time they remained silent. Faustina took up the lyre, drew her fingers across the strings. Not a melody, merely individual notes filling the quiet, yet not destroying it. Marcus gazed at the mosaic on the floor, a scene from the Odyssey, where the hero chooses between Scylla and Charybdis. How eloquent, he finally remarked, permitting himself a smile. Faustina set down the instrument. Coincidence? I purchased this house 3 years ago. The mosaic was already here. I don't believe in coincidences where you're concerned. She allowed herself a smile. Tomorrow in the Senate? Tomorrow? Marcus gripped the cup. Publius will propose postponing the vote. He'll claim we need more time to study the situation in the province. In reality, he'll gain a month to bribe those who waver. And you? I insist on immediate resolution. We have the majority. Now. In a month. He did not finish. Faustina rose and approached the window. Beyond the portico stretched a garden, neat pathways between myrtle bushes, a fountain with a dolphin. She lingered there, gazing into darkness, granting Marcus time to collect his thoughts. The danger lies, he continued, in appearing hasty, impatient, ambitious. You are ambitious, but one cannot reveal it. Rome does not favor those who reach too openly for power. Faustina turned. Moonlight from the window fell across her face, and Marcus forgot politics for an instant. She had witnessed this gaze 1,000 times. The moment when a man remembers that before him stands a woman. Yet she did not allow this moment to linger. Cicero said that true power lies not in seizing it, but in making others wish to grant it to you. Easy to say when you're Cicero. Easy to say when you understand the nature of people. She returned to her couch, took a date from a silver bowl, slowly broke it apart. Publius wants to postpone the vote because he fears. Fear is weakness. Demonstrate that you do not fear, yet not through haste, but through certainty. How? Agree to the delay. Marcus lifted his head sharply. What? That's madness. We'll lose. Hear me. Her voice was quiet, yet steel rang within it. Agree publicly. State that Publius is correct. Such an important decision requires time. Present yourself as wise and patient. Yet in your speech, embed all arguments so skillfully that the senators themselves will understand. Delay is meaningless. You will not rush them. You will allow them to arrive at your conclusion independently. Marcus fell silent. She observed how consequences unfolded in his eyes. Publius anticipates a fight, Faustina continued. He has prepared for confrontation. You will deny him an opponent. Moreover, you will demonstrate that you stand above petty intrigues. And in a week, when senators reread your speech, and they will reread it, they will perceive its true strength. And then they themselves will demand an immediate vote. She rose, approached him, knelt beside the couch. She touched his hand, a light touch, almost incorporeal. Marcus, you are more intelligent than all of them. Yet politics is not chess, but the most intelligent player prevails. It is theater, where the one who best understands the audience triumphs. He gazed at her for a long while, then slowly nodded. You are dangerous, Faustina. I'm your friend. Precisely why you're dangerous. She laughed, quietly, genuinely. She rose, returned to the lyre. Will you remain until morning? I wish I could, but I must rewrite the speech, then go, and Marcus. She drew across the strings, drawing forth a chord. Remember, power comes to those who know how to wait, yet not to hesitate. When he departed, Faustina sat for a long while in the half-darkness of the atrium. Glycera brought her a cup of diluted wine. Is the mistress satisfied? We shall see in a month. She knew that tomorrow in the Senate, a performance would unfold. Marcus would deliver a speech that would enter the textbooks of rhetoric. Publius would find himself trapped by his own strategy. And she, Faustina, a woman without name in the official chronicles, would once again move an invisible piece on the board of empire. Marcus Licinius's speech truly entered history. Quintilian quoted it as an example of perfect argumentation. 3 weeks later, the Senate voted for his bill unanimously. Publius retreated into shadow. Marcus received a proconsulship in a wealthy province, and Faustina remained in her villa on the Palatine, receiving guests, reading philosophers, playing the lyre. History did not preserve the exact date of her passing. She simply vanished from mentions, as did many courtesans whose names flickered through letters and memoirs, yet never appeared in official annals. It is known only that she lived into the reign of Augustus, and in her will freed all her slaves, granting them land and means. The fates of Roman courtesans were varied. Some, like Faustina, ended their lives in relative prosperity, surrounded by students and memory. Others lost beauty and influence, sliding down the social ladder. Still others became victims of political intrigues. They knew too much, had interfered too deeply in dangerous games. Yet all of them, during their flowering, possessed something unique. A space of freedom in a society where women were imprisoned between the walls of virtue and contempt. The paradox of their existence lay in this. The very loss of social honor granted them freedom inaccessible to respectable matrons. A matron was required to be invisible, virtuous, silent, obedient. A courtesan could speak, laugh, debate, influence. She paid for this with a steep price. Public scorn, legal limitations, the impossibility of transmitting status to her children. Yet in exchange, she received something many Roman women craved: her own voice. Modern researchers find it difficult to reconstruct their actual lives. Sources contradict. Poets idealize them, moralists demonize them, laws classified them alongside prostitutes. Truth resides somewhere between these extremes. They were neither saints nor sinners, neither victims nor heroines. They were women who discovered a way to exist in a system that left them no place, and transformed that existence into an art form. Their influence upon Roman culture was substantial. They became muses to poets. Horace, Propertius, Ovid dedicated verses to them. They created a model of salon culture that would later revive in the Renaissance and flourish in the Enlightenment. They demonstrated that education and intellect could serve as feminine weapons, no less keen than a man's sword. When Christianity became the state religion, their world began to disappear. The new morality left no space for those who existed between categories. Salons closed, tradition was severed, yet memory remained. In poems, letters, stories passed along in whispers. Today, gazing upon the remains of Roman villas, it proves difficult to envision those evenings when, in the flickering of oil lamps, the fates of empire were decided. When a woman denied the right to vote in the Senate, directed the votes of senators through the art of conversation, when a courtesan despised by law possessed greater influence than many patricians. Their story serves as a reminder that power does not always wear official regalia. Sometimes it is clothed in a linen stola and speaks in a quiet voice in the half-darkness of an atrium. Sometimes it does not demand, but suggests, does not command, but persuades, is not recorded in annals, yet shapes their content. Faustina and thousands of women like her remain shadows upon the walls of history. Yet these shadows possess form, and if one looks carefully, one can perceive how much light they defined through their contours. The truth proved far more profound. Roman courtesans were not selling the body. They were selling intellect, education, understanding. Their true weapons were philosophy, music, the ability to listen and to guide. They became what matrons could never be, free companions in conversation in a world where women were forbidden to speak. Remarkable, isn't it? If this story resonated with you, leave a heart. It inspires new episodes. Subscribe to discover even more secrets of the past. And be certain to press the bell. Ahead lie extraordinary stories of women whose names history erased, yet whose power cannot be denied. Until we meet again, friends, take care of yourselves.